Hello, my name is Brian Forbes, and this is my Module 15 case study for AEP 858, Data Analysis and Assessment. In this module case study, we will be looking at Truman Elementary School in a situation they find themselves in where they have declining scores in the area of reading for their students. The building is a pre-K through 8th grade building with over 700 students. Some other demographic information that is pertinent to this particular case study is the fact that 15% of their students are receiving or eligible for free and reduced lunches, which roughly about 105 of the 700 students are what qualify. Some other information here includes the fact that they have consistently had scores throughout the building of students in reading scoring lower and lower, actually to where they have an increase in the gap between the students in their building in the area of reading and cohorts throughout the district and state. This has led to some parental concerns where parents are upset with these results and they also want to know what's being done about it. They've requested that the principal, myself in this situation, I've been there 2 years now, to come to a PTA meeting to respond to some of these questions and concerns. Moving forward into this, there's going to be some questions that need to be examined about some communication policies, school processes, and other elements that have impacted on this particular situation. And then a third element to this case study is the idea that the State Department of Education is actually offering a grant so that schools with underperforming scores or student achievement in the area of reading can actually apply for a monetary boost, or a grant, that is, in order to implement some research-based curriculum so that they can turn things around, but only if they're eligible. So when we look at the whole module, the whole case study here, we have to look at, what is the problem, and then kind of dig into it through a little bit of analysis. So some of the things that we know about this problem is that, one, we have these consistent negative scores. There's part of the case study presents us with some tabled information that has been collected that shows that test scores across the building in different grade levels over a 3-year period have continually declined. There are some instances where it's gone up on the second year and then back down again on the third year, but those are more outliers than the norms. Definitely not the average case. Some other things we know is that that parents are upset. We had a letter sent to the principal or myself in the case study requesting that I attend a PTA meeting so that I can defend what the building is doing, to answer some of the rumors that they've heard, and then also to, inform the group about what we plan to do moving forward. And then we also know that there's this grant opportunity that clearly the community and the PTA is not aware of, but I, the principal, have received a letter for. Some of the things we would want to know moving forward in order to better plan what we're going to do, what kind of actions or steps we need to take, would be to identify the processes for communication. Why does the principal, myself, know about the grant opportunity, but the PTA or the community is not aware of the opportunity? Why, when you look at the dates on the requests from everyone, it says that the PTA sent a letter requesting this meeting, but that letter was actually sent well after the principal, I, had already requested the district reading specialist to come in and analyze the teaching processes and instructional methods of our teachers that are being used to teach reading. Because I must have already identified this as an area of problem, but then that was not shared with the community. So why are we waiting for the community to hear about things secondhand and then get upset because of this lack of communication? Another thing we would want to look at would be, are we actually eligible for the grant? The grant says that schools must have a high need, not only for the student improvement in this area, but also because of a high population of students that are in poverty, and so does qualification for free and reduced lunches, not necessarily even participation, is that going to make us eligible for this or not? And then the other thing I'd want to look at are what are the things that we can actually change. The reading specialist did give some feedback based on my request for the analysis of our instructional techniques and how those are being used across the building. But we still need to look at what are some concrete things we can do. One thing that was kind of suggested had a little bit to do with the fact that reading was not always a part of the daily instruction, and sometimes it was longer or shorter in different classes, and it was just not very normalized. So that's something we can definitely look at. But really, overall, there's a few things that we could look at that really are a problem. The first is that my building is not using a research-based instructional practice in order to teach reading. It seems like teachers are kind of doing whatever they want to do in order to accomplish this task, and a lot of times it's just kind of being skimmed over. Another thing is that we are clearly, as an administration, and even myself as the principal in this case, and we're not really monitoring the teaching practices to make sure that they're normalized across the building and that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to, achieve student success. And then also, all of these things kind of combine into the idea that we have parental concerns over the declining grades for students' reading scores. So this is a big problem. And then also, if with that distrust also creates a question of, are we going to get enough buy-in in order to, apply for this grant, even on the district level? All right, so my plans of action based on the things we know and don't know, and also just kind of what the overall problem is, it can be broken down into three things. The first is communication. We need to have normalized meetings all the time. I need to attend those meetings as the principal, but we also need to have meetings. We need to have site councils created where people from the community come in. We need to have meetings with parents on a regular basis. We need to have transparency where this data that is being collected, even though we identify the gaps and the errors in our school processes, those need to be shared with the community. So we need to disseminate that information. And we also need to be proactive with these issues. Instead of waiting for parents or the community to be upset and request meetings, we need to try and get in front of these issues and share the information so that we can start a collaborative process in order to avoid problems like this in the future. Now, the next step would be to investigate some things. First, I'd want to investigate, again, what is our eligibility for this type of program? Clearly, these funds could be used to really, purchase materials or the kind of training and professional development that's needed in order to implement new instructional practices. But before we can do any of those things, we need to find out, are we actually going to be capable of applying for this and then able to get it? Another thing would be, what is our district interest in this? Are we the only building that has this problem, or is the district actually interested in trying to apply for the grant on a larger basis because multiple schools are having issues? And then what are the school processes that we currently have? Because we said that through our identification and our analysis of our instructional techniques that everyone's kind of doing their own thing. That we're not consistent across the building, but what is it that we're supposed to be doing across the building? Is it possible that any of these processes that we already have could be implemented in a way that really makes the grant not even something that we have to do? Now, moving forward, I would go ahead and fill out the application with the approval of my superintendent and the School Board of Education. I would also want to start implementing professional development, whether or not we get that grant, to make sure that all teachers, especially in the ELA department, are utilizing best instructional based practices in order to increase student achievement, and we want to be consistent. And then another thing is to monitor those processes. I can't wait until test scores go down before I decide, okay, I need to look at what's happening here. We need to have something set in place where things are regularly monitored and then feedback is given to instructors. So really, basically, all of those things in my plan of action is going to benefit students. And we want to do that by opening a communication with the community that is meaningful, reciprocal, and beneficial. And so we're going to do that by creating communication that didn't already exist. We're going to collaborate with our stakeholders and get their input on things, especially about changes to instructional practices and other school processes that we weren't asking them for previously. And then also I'd want to apply for this grant because it's going to be beneficial for both of us because it doesn't rely on property taxes or asking them to approve bond issues, but instead this eliminates the need for them to do anything, but still increases our school budget and the effectiveness of our building to educate students. Now, some of the things I thought about while looking at this case study was that I really thought that there was not a lot of oversight when it comes to our instructional practices. Why, as an administrator, am I not making the effort to regularly monitor teachers, to do more walkthroughs, to look at lesson plans, and then to give that kind of feedback in order to make sure all of these things are happening? And I really felt disappointment just in the lack of effort of our school and our district, even through communication, for the community not to be in the know when almost 5-6 months go by, when clearly I know that things are bad, but not sharing with them not only the problems, but then the steps we're trying to take to improve these issues. Another thing I'm valuing during this time is just the perception of the community. I don't want the community to feel that we're not on their side. I don't want them to think that I'm not working in the best interest of their students, because that's obviously not the case. And we want to give that perception a boost as well, because we want students to have higher achievement, and then with higher achievement also gets a higher perception. And then some of the things I thought are kind of left unresolved are still like, I'm not positive that we're going to qualify. I don't know. I mean, when I say 105, 110 students are a lot of kids to be in the poverty level, that's true. But just because they're eligible doesn't mean they're receiving it. Is that going to affect our eligibility? Or maybe there are other schools out there with much higher percentages around us or in the states for Truman Elementary. And I just don't know if we're actually going to get the grant if that many people are applying. So we can't really rely on that. So Standard 8, which we looked at just a little bit a second ago, basically, is breaking down into three things: that my efforts are going to be meaningful, they're going to be reciprocal, and they're going to be beneficial. So they're going to be meaningful because my efforts to start these communications with the community is going to show them that, we're wanting to build bridges, we want to build trust, and then we want to be reciprocal in the fact that we're doing things that allow them to give us feedback as well, and that their opinions are taken into account when we make decisions. And then the last thing is that it's mutually beneficial, which we touched on a little bit again already about funding. So we're not relying on the community to do anything other than, giving their verbal help and their opinions, but at the same time, we're not asking for their money. So I use data to communicate with the community by collecting, analyzing, displaying the data in easy to understand terminology. So the table helps with that, to look at the gaps in our test scores and what those issues are, but also our plans and our steps moving forward. We need to show how the budget is in need, what that money can do, what we're able to purchase, what we're able to fund, what kind of training we can get because of that. And then we need to distribute all that data. We can't wait for just one PTA meeting where we're requested to attend. We need to disseminate it through email and newsletters and social media posts and meetings that we regularly attend. And then also, we need to show that stakeholders are going to be impacted directly through the reception of this information. Another thing is that I use my own knowledge of school processes, such as like the teaching practices, and my ability to monitor them and make sure they're implemented across the school. I want to make sure that we're all receiving the professional development that we need in order to implement any instructional practices or changes that we make, especially things being research-driven or research-backed, because right now just allowing teachers to kind of do whatever they want on their own time or pace or opinion is clearly creating big gaps in our building. And then another thing is that we want to make sure that we have collaboration time built into the day, just like we want ELA to be taught every day so that reading instruction is going to result in student achievement. But we also want to make sure that teachers are meeting regularly to talk about what's working and what's not working, what changes can they make, and those types of things. And the last thing is I want to make sure that stakeholders here have ongoing dialogue. We want to create a site council that meets regularly so that we get input from the community. I want, again, to disseminate that information through multiple sources of mediums, whether it's technology or paper pencil or in person. And then I also want to make sure that we start implementing surveys of educators, community members, parents, students, whatever stakeholder there is, in order to know that everybody's involved in the school process. Well, that's it. That was my Module 15. I appreciate everybody watching, and I hope you guys learned as much as I did.